Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. Welcome back to the Uddhava-gita course. My name is Giridhari, and today we are finishing up the chapter where Krishna started talking about the very basics of spiritual life and then developed into the focus of bhakti, because usually that's how the Bhagavad-gita goes, that's how these spiritual texts goes, because bhakti is the highest devotion, this loving connection is the highest aspect of yoga, as Krishna describes in Bhagavad-gita. So he did this process of gradually talking about devotion to the highest aspect of spiritual life. Now we're at the very last two verses of this chapter, and Krishna is going to give us very important information which says that without this we cannot escape from birth and death. We cannot escape from this cycle. And then in the next chapter, we're just going to go right on to the next chapter where Krishna is going to continue to develop this topic. Now, if you want to watch the previous classes of our Uddhava-gita course, make sure you become a member of this channel. The instructions are here in the description of the video, and then you can access the entire Uddhava-gita course here on YouTube at your convenience. So we are now doing the 11th canto, 11th chapter, and we're starting with verse 48. So Krishna says to Uddhava, "My dear Uddhava, I am personally the ultimate shelter and way of life for saintly liberated persons. And thus, if one does not engage in my devotional service, in bhakti towards me, which is made possible by associating with my devotees, then for all practical purposes, one possesses no effective means for escaping from material existence." What a powerful verse. This is such a great verse. So let's look at it again. So he says, I love this beginning, I am the ultimate. I am personally, me, Krishna, who's there talking to Uddhava. Krishna, I am the ultimate shelter. Very important word, shelter. As you know, like the apex of Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says, come to me for shelter. Come to me alone. Take shelter of me alone. Come to me and take shelter. This is a very important spiritual concept for you to develop. Very important, very strong. It's for me, I mean, I really love it. I really vibrate in this concept of shelter, of taking shelter, of asking just for Lord to protect you. Very important concept. You see this throughout the devotional literature in the Vedas. Taking shelter. It says, for example, about Lord Ram, that if you just once ask Lord Ram to protect you, then that's it. From then on, you'll be protected by him. So this feeling of taking shelter, it's very important. So I am the ultimate shelter. And then I love this other part, and the way of life. That's great, isn't it? The way of life. Not just the shelter, but the way of life. Your whole life, that's what it's all about. The way of life for saintly liberated persons. Beautiful. Krishna is the way of life. That's what it is. People don't understand this when people are starting their spiritual life, the concept of devotion in the Krishna tradition, in the Bhakti tradition, goes beyond just an understanding of God. It's about going deeper. It's the way of life, your whole life. That's what it's about. If you look at of course, Krishna will, at some point, much later, here in the Uddhava-gita, much later, talk about the gopis as the perfect example of this, the way of life. Their whole life was dedicated to Krishna, was about Krishna, was centered on Krishna. This is what Krishna Bhakti means. This is the great contribution of devotion that we can get from the Bhagavad Purana and from the Krishna tradition in general. So it's the way of life. And thus, so that's a fact. So Krishna is establishing those two very powerful facts. And thus, if one does not engage in bhakti towards me, Krishna is saying, so all these things, so if you don't have this connection with me, if you don't have this bhakti with me, And then he adds a little caveat, which is going to be the topic of the next chapter, which is made possible by associating with my devotees. He just put a little parentheses there. So if you don't have this loving devotional service towards me, then for all practical purposes, I mean, we can discuss it, but basically speaking, Krishna is saying, I love this, for all practical purposes, one possesses no effective means for escaping from material existence. This is really powerful stuff. So, and this is also a major, pretty much like a running theme in Bhagavad-gita from the moment Krishna talks about himself. So from the end of chapter 6, in Bhagavad-gita, last verse of chapter 6, Krishna says, look, of all the yogis, the bhakti yogi is the highest. So he talks about all the yogas in chapters 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then he said, but bhakti is the highest. And then from that point on, all the other chapters in Bhagavad Gita, so from 7 all the way to 18, Krishna, every single chapter, he will explain things and show that, but then he'll say, without bhakti, you can't do it. Always, the finishing message of each chapter is, without bhakti, you won't be able to do this. Without bhakti, it won't work. So that's a huge theme of how bhakti is presented in Bhagavad Gita. Same thing here. You will not be able to do it. Very powerful. Purport. Lord Krishna has described to Uddhava the characteristics of Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So we began the chapter with beautiful Jnana Yoga verses, and then Krishna went into Bhakti Yoga, both of which are considered to be spiritual processes. Now, however, Lord Krishna indicates that Bhakti Yoga is the only real means to totally free oneself from material existence, and that Bhakti Yoga is not possible without satsanga, associating with other, like-minded spiritual Bhakti Krishna seekers, or with other Vaishnavas. On the path of Bhakti, Mishra Jnana, that means Mishra is mixed. It's almost like similar to the word mixed. So Bhakti mixed with Jnana. So Bhakti Mishra Jnana, or speculation on the absolute truth mixed with devotion, one is still affected by the 3 modes of material nature. The pure soul, liberated from all material qualities, has no tendency or desire to engage in philosophical speculation, severe austerities, or impersonal meditation. The pure soul simply loves Krishna and wants to serve him constantly. So people don't get this about what Krishna Bhakti is trying to introduce, what I try to explain. It's not just about a general concept of God. It's not about just saving your skin, getting liberation, moksha. No. It really is about Krishna. It really is about loving Krishna, simply loving. It's a loving relationship. It's 2 people, because we are eternal people. We are now in a body. This body will fade away and rot, but I am a person, not the body. My body isn't a person. My body allows me to manifest personhood, but it doesn't produce personhood. Personhood comes from the soul. You, the soul, the entity, consciousness, spiritual energy. That's where person is. That's where it's coming from. So it's a spiritual, it's a quality of the soul, not of the body. So, and of course, God is the supreme soul. Super soul, we say. Paramatma. We're Atma and he is Paramatma. But these are 2 persons. So how do you connect 2 persons? What is the best connection between 2 persons? Love. Love is the best connection. Love is the most beautiful. Love is the topmost connection. It's that simple. So we're talking about having a real loving relationship with Krishna. It's not about moksha. It's not about, oh, you know, watching out for number one here. No, it's the loving relationship. So, the pure soul simply loves Krishna and wants to serve him constantly out of love. Jiveda Swarupahaya Krishnera Nitya Dasa. Pure devotional service to the Lord is called Kevala Bhakti, whereas devotional service mixed with speculative propensities is called Guna Bhuta Bhakti, or devotional service polluted by gunas, by the material modes of nature. What are we talking about here? We're talking about not having things cleared up yet. You're not sure. You're figuring it out. You're a seeker. Once you become a jnani, you're seeking knowledge. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's higher than being a karmi. So a karmi, karma, action, just matter, just fruits of the action. A karmi, he's just like what, you know, he's just like a regular mundane materialistic person. No thought of spirituality. That's a karmi. Now, above the karmi is the jnani. The jnani, he's like, oh, you know, what's life about? Who am I? Is there a God? What is he or she, they, it like? So a jnani is philosophizing. What's life about? Is it this way? Is it that way? You know, so that's very good. So karmi, jnani. Then above the jnani is the yogi. The yogi is already like practicing. He understands his soul. He's not the body. He's getting all these, you know, practices and habits, and his life is focused on spiritual enlightenment. It's perfect. But then Krishna says, of all yogis, the bhakti yogi is the best. So then the bhakta, the devotee, the Bhagavata person. That's the topmost, because then he's like, he knows exactly. Now I understand everything. Now I understand the nature of the soul of God, of, you know, the realm of God, of the world, of the gunas. I get it all now. Everything fits. And you'll get this. If you haven't gotten there yet, you're in the right place. Stick with the Bhagavad Purana, with the Uddhava-gita. Stick with this, go deep, and then everything is going to become clear. Clear. And it's the most beautiful thing that happened with me as well. So everything becomes clear. It's like the fog being lifted, and you can see the whole, like all the way to the horizon. Everything is clear now. Before it was this like dark fog, and you were like seeing bits and pieces, but couldn't really figure anything out. But now everything becomes clear. And so at this level, what they're talking about it when a person isn't quite at that level yet. They're like, you know, they're figuring, they're getting bits and pieces, so they're jnanis, so, but they're still like, is it this way? Is it that way? Does it work this? Maybe that, maybe the other thing. There isn't quite a focus yet. So, which is good. It's just like, you know, a person's working through things, right? It's like, it's not just a animalistic karmi, like the scriptures like to say, like an animal, like they compare, like they say, like a two-legged animal. You know, the human who doesn't do anything spiritual, doesn't think about life, of, you know, existence of God. It's like an animal, because yes, it's just no different than any other animal. So it's this ability to spiritualize which distinguishes humans from animals. Everything else, it's not a point, it's not important. Animals do everything else we do. So that's what they're talking about. People haven't quite figured things out yet. So it's devotional service polluted by the material modes of nature. So, you know, like your habits, your mind isn't clear, you have devotion, but, you know, things aren't quite clear yet. One who is actually intelligent does not make a show of philosophical wizardry, but rather discerns the superiority of pure love of Godhead and takes to the path of Kevala Bhakti. Kevala just means pure. Kevala Bhakti. one who emphasizes, and bhakti, devotion, so pure devotion. One who emphasizes so-called intellectual achievements is actually less intelligent, because such a person is more attracted to intelligence than to the pure soul, which is superior. So in the hierarchy of explanation, the way it works is you have like matter, then you have your senses, which operate in matter, and then you have the mind, and then on top of the mind you have intelligence. On top of intelligence you have your identity, your ego, your concept of who you are, and then on top of that, the ahankara it's called, and then on top of that, the real you, the soul. So that's the hierarchy. So the intelligence is lower than ahankara, and is certainly lower than the pure soul, Atma. It should be understood, however, that pure devotional service is not non-philosophical or anti-intellectual, by no means. The absolute truth is far more extensive than partial truth. That's what it is. Therefore, one who is in full knowledge of Lord Krishna has the greatest facility to engage in philosophical analysis, since the pure devotee is working with the entire range of conceptual categories. Those who do not know Lord Krishna are attracted to the impersonal Brahman or the localized Paramatma, but they are not aware of the ultimate category of understanding called Bhagavan. So the three levels, they're referring here to the three levels of God, right? Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Brahman, the concept of transcendence, of the impersonal, the energy of the Lord, the light, divine light. Then Paramatma, God localized in your heart, in every atom, in every living being. So this direct Paramatma, focus of meditation yogis. But then above that, Bhagavan, God in His full splendor, in personal, transcendental form, manifesting His personal, His personality, and active in loving activities in His divine abode. So this is the full manifestation of God. In Brahman, you have the energy of God, but no form, no personality. In Paramatma, you have the energy and form, but no personality. It's more like a static view. It's just like a presence, almost like a deity in an altar, but like a real live presence of God. But then Bhagavan, fully active, full personality. You have the energy, you have the form, you have the personality. So that's the topmost form of God. So people who don't have this understanding, so again, this is part of the jnana process. You have to get the jnana to get the fog to lift up so you can see everything, and then you'll simply love Krishna. Then you understand. So though it's simple, it's actually a whole philosophical baggage, and all this knowledge is necessary to give you that clarity of mind. That's why, the Bhagavad Purana is such a masterpiece. And a giant, over 14,000 verses. It says 18,000 classically speaking, but if you count like this current version we're having here, it comes out to like 14,600 or something. So it's a giant, it's 20 times the size of Bhagavad-gita. Beautiful, super philosophy, super high level, the highest level of Sanskrit, of all the Sanskrit texts, highest level. So highest level of philosophy and quality of writing, literature, grammar. This is the topmost book in the entire Vedic corpus, the Bhagavad Purana. Of course, we're doing the translation, so we're losing out a lot, but still, we're getting good stuff. So this is the topmost. So there's a lot of knowledge, and that just gets you that laser focus on Krishna. Lacking knowledge of Bhagavan, such imperfect philosophers certainly do not understand the expansion, interaction, and withdrawal of the Lord's innumerable potencies, and thus cannot fully analyze them. By faithfully accepting everything Lord Krishna speaks as the absolute truth, one comes to the mature platform of philosophy and achieves perfect knowledge. Very beautiful. In addition to philosophical or intellectual understanding, pure devotional service also awards all other benefits in life, both material and spiritual. Therefore, one who for any purpose whatsoever accepts a process other than bhakti, other than devotional service, has unfortunately misunderstood the nature of pure devotional service to Lord Krishna. If you don't fully dedicate yourself to bhakti, you just don't get it yet. You just haven't figured things out yet. It is emphasized here that one must cultivate devotional service in the association of other devotees, which is going to be the topic of the next chapter as well. It's going to be the starting topic. On the other hand, the Jnana Yoga process is cultivated alone because it is difficult for even two mental speculators to be in the same place without their association degenerating into constant quarrel. Other processes of self-realization are compared to the nipples on a goat's neck. It's a funny old thing, most people don't even know this, but if you look closely at a goat, these like little things, it's like little warty things that look like nipples, but there's no milk is going to come out of those things. They're just little warts. They look just like breast nipples, but they will not give any milk whatsoever. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has quoted the following verses spoken by Sri Uddhava, Shukadev Goswami, and Narada Muni, respectively. Tapatrayena bhitasya kore santapya manasya bhavadvanniha pashyami nanya charanam tavangri dvandva patrat amrita bivarshat. My dear Lord, for one who is being cruelly burned in the blazing fire of material miseries, having fallen into the network of material existence, I do not see any other possible shelter besides your two lotus feet, which are a shower of nectar, extinguishing the fire of suffering. Oh, what a great verse. This is going to be spoken by Uddhava later on in it was spoken by Uddhava later on, in chapter 19, verse 9. Now, a quote from Shukadev Goswami. Samsara siddhum antidushtaram itirshor nanya plavo bhagavata purushottamasya lillakata rasa nishavenam antarena pumsho bhaved vividha dukkha davarditasya. Material existence is like an ocean that is extremely difficult to cross. Very common, this description of the ocean. The conditioned souls have fallen into this ocean, which is not cool, but rather burns them with the fire of misery. For one who has fallen into this sea and desires to get out, there is no other rescue boat except the constant relishing within oneself of the pastime narrations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What a verse. These are amazing verses chosen by our great previous spiritual master, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And this is from the 12th Canto, 4th chapter, verse 40. Just gorgeous, beautiful verse. And then finally, this would be from Narada Muni. Kim va yogena sankhena nyasa swadhayorapi kim va shrayobir anyascha nayatratma pradohari. What is the use of the yoga system, philosophical speculation, mere renunciation of the world, or Vedic studies? In fact, what is the use of any so-called auspicious process without Lord Krishna, who is the source of our very existence? Makes sense. And this is from the 4th Canto, 31st chapter, verse 12. If, as stated in this verse, it is generally prayena impossible to escape material bondage without devotional service in the association of devotees, one can simply imagine the probabilities of liberation in Kali Yuga without the Krishna consciousness movement? The chances are certainly zero. One may concoct a type of liberation on the mental platform, or one may live in a so-called spiritual society of mutual flattery. But if one actually wants to go back home, back to Godhead, and see with spiritual eyes the beautiful kingdom of God called Krishna Loka, one must take to Lord Chaitanya's movement and worship Lord Krishna in the association of the Bhakta Gana, the devotees of the Lord. Very beautiful, very intense. This was that was just one verse and one purport. Amazing. Okay, now, this is the last verse of this wonderful chapter. Verse 49. My dear Uddhava, O beloved of the Yadu dynasty, because you are my servant, well-wisher, and friend, I shall now speak to you the most confidential knowledge. Please hear as I explain these great mysteries to you. So now, he's already spoken so much. We've learned so much already in the Uddhava-gita. But we're just starting. Yeah, we have almost 50 classes in this course already. It's huge. But we're just starting. We have another 17 chapters to go. Yes. So we've done 4, and we have 17 to go. So you can just imagine how many more mysteries Krishna is going to reveal to us, because we are his servant, well-wisher, and friend as well. Because we're here, we're following in the footsteps. So now we're being included in this very special category of being Lord Krishna's servant, well-wisher, and friend. Purport. It is stated in the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.8. Bruyu snigdhasya shishyasya guravo guhyam apyuta. A bona fide spiritual master naturally reveals all transcendental secrets to a sincere disciple. Sri Uddhava has completely surrendered to Lord Krishna, and then only could the Lord explain such mysteries to him. Because without complete faith, the transmission of spiritual knowledge is impossible. Other processes of self-realization, such as philosophical speculation, are imperfect and unsteady because the performer has personal desires, and there is no definite procedure by which to obtain the full mercy of the Supreme Lord. On the other hand, association with the pure devotees of the Lord is a self-sufficient process that is guaranteed to award the desired result. One must only learn how to associate with the pure devotees, and one's life will be perfect. This is the sum and substance of this chapter. And now is the topic of the next chapter, the beginning of the next chapter as well. So let's get on to that. So now we're in chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. So, we're just going to read the verse, and then we'll go back to it in the next class and read the purport as well. Now, and then I'll explain a little bit so you understand, because it's a difficult thing to understand in these days. The term satsanga, association with devotees, a little different from what it always has been. And so stay to the end, because I'll explain that. So let's read the verse. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, so Krishna continues speaking to Uddhava. My dear Uddhava, by associating with my pure devotees, one can destroy one's attachment for all objects of material sense gratification. Such purifying association brings me under the control of my devotees. So this is a famous thing of Krishna becoming under the control of his loving devotees just by love. Because that's what happens, right? If you love someone, this beautiful loving relationship, they kind of control you, right? You control them, you're controlled by them, like every father and mother has been controlled by their children, like that. A husband controlled by the wife, well, that's very common. And sometimes, very rarely, a wife controlled by the husband, right? So these things happen all the time, it's out of love. One may perform the Ashtanga Yoga system, engage in philosophical analysis of the elements of material nature, Sankhya. So you say you can do Ashtanga Yoga, you can do Sankhya. You can practice non-violence, ahimsa, and other ordinary principles of piety. You can chant the Vedas, right? The Brahmanas would chant the Veda Samhitas, Rig Veda, and so they would chant. So you can chant the Vedas. You can perform penances, right? You can make vows of penances. Like you could see this in the Christian tradition. They used to do that a lot. So you can perform penances. You can take to the renounced order of life. You can renounce everything. Take sannyas. Become a renounced person. Leave social life. You can execute sacrificial performances. So you can, of course, the Vedas, all those sacrificial performances, all those rituals, big fire rituals and other kinds of rituals with complicated. So you can do that. Or you can do pious stuff like dig wells. Right? Because in the past people needed water. You dig well, that's like a nice thing. Okay, now people can have water. You can dig wells. You can plant trees. And perform other public welfare activities. Give in charity. Carry out severe vows. Worship the demigods. Yeah, you can do that. That's purifying. That's in the mode of goodness. That is a religion in the mode of goodness, to worship. It's material, but it's a religion in the mode of goodness. Worship the demigods. You can chant confidential mantras. You can visit holy places. Or accept major and minor disciplinary injunctions. Yamas and niyamas. But even by performing such activities, one does not bring me under his control. So that's it, a huge list of things. Just so Krishna said, but all those things won't do me, won't work with me. That's not it. Those are great, very nice, but it's not enough. It's not love. You see? It's not love. So, let's stop with this, but let me explain this just quickly. We'll explain this more in the other classes too, but just so you get it. What is this association with devotees? What is satsanga? Well, before, of course, there was no other way but for you to take your body and walk over somewhere and, like physically be in the same physical space, right? That's it. That's what you had to do. That's why they had holy places. That's why it was good to go to a holy place. If you read verses in the Bhagavatam saying that if you go to a holy place and you don't hear Harikatha, if you don't do this that you're doing now, then you're just like an ass or a cow. Because cows wander, and asses and cows and dogs and pigs, they go to holy places too. What benefit do they get? They get some, but it doesn't do much. You're there to listen. So it was all about satsanga. That was why it was so important to go to holy places, pilgrimage. So you could get satsanga. So you could sit in front of the guru and hear instructions. But now, of course, things are different. Now we have this. So this is a very new thing, right? This has just been happening for a short while, in terms of human history, just a flash of time. But now we have this. So now you're having satsanga. We have this book. So now we have book, of course, before books weren't common. Now we have books. So we have the book. And when you read the book, that is the most intense satsanga. We're having such intense satsanga here, right? We were just here with Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this great spiritual master of the 17th century, because his words were here. So that's it. That's what it's all about. It's not about being physically in physical proximity. That won't do you anything. Physical proximity is not spiritual. It's consciousness. It's all about your heart, consciousness, connecting minds. So when we read, we're connecting our minds. So when a great spiritual master wrote something, and then we read what he wrote, our minds have been connected. It's just like if I was sitting in front of him. It's the same thing. And now you're here and we're together. This is satsanga. So everybody who's watching this, we're together. It's like we just got together, we just walked over to the mandir and we're all sat there and we had this nice class. It's the same thing. But now it's happening, now we have this mystical power that's been granted widely, so now I can be talking to you, and at the same time I can talk to 1,000 other people as they're watching other videos of mine and other classes. And so now I am directly giving class to thousands of people all over the world. This mystical power Krishna has given us in the form of technology. But this is satsanga, just so you understand, this is satsanga. For example, the students of my Bhagavad-gita course, they have a WhatsApp group. And they get together in the WhatsApp group. So that is satsanga. They're together there. They're united there in conversation, in contact with one another. So that's satsanga as well. So that's it. We'll talk more about this topic in the upcoming classes because we'll be talking about association with devotees. And so thank you very much for your time, your patience. Have the rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love. Hare Krishna.